Note, the following program is a Springer Podcast Network production.
Have you noticed how hard it's become just to get help? You call customer service and you're stuck talking to an automated system. You finally reach a person and sometimes they're halfway across the world. You walk into a store and employees look exhausted. Customers are angrier than ever. Somewhere along the way, customer service stopped being about serving the customer. So, what happened? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Cody Springer Show. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about customer service. Yes, customer service and why customer service is dying. Yes, because customer service feels worse than it did years ago. And I feel like companies are more interested in cutting costs than helping the customer. Because, you get on the phone, you're trying to get a hold of somebody, you have an issue with your service or a product, and it just takes forever to get to an actual person because they put you through so many prompts and they want your account information, put in your phone number, put in your social security number, and it's just a pain in the ass. It really is. And then automated phone systems are everywhere. You're talking to, basically an AI recording, and they're like, oh, well, push this button to get to this department, and then you have to push this button to get to this place. And then, you're just stuck in a wild goose chase pretty much, trying to get to talk to somebody. And then when you do get a hold of somebody, and the person isn't, and I mean no offense when I say this, but they're not an English speaking person. I mean, they talk in English, but it's like a broken English. Like they have an accent, they're a foreigner, they're from a foreign country, and they don't know very good English, and it becomes kind of hard to understand them, and then you would just end up getting frustrated. And, and now they're talking about AI possibly trying to fix that, where they're going to be using AI software when these call center representatives, when they take calls, the AI software is going to try to mimic an accent that sounds more American. Yeah, it's going to make them sound more American, or try to at least. And then, like, let's say you're in the South, you're down in Texas, or, people who have a Southern accent. Yeah, so this call center representative is, the AI software is going to try to mimic a Southern accent. So instead of like them talking, in their, the kind of their broken English, they're going to try to talk like this, like howdy y'all, how you doing today? It's going to try to mimic something like that. And the funny thing is, I don't think AI is going to be able to fix any of this at all. Before we get back into the show, if you're a WWE fan, then you'll definitely want to check out this week's episode of Pro Wrestling Focus, because it's going to be one that you will not want to miss. We're breaking down the blockbuster announcement that Gunther versus Nick Aldis is officially set for SummerSlam. The latest on WWE's reported plans for a potential Tom Brady versus Logan Paul match after things boiled over at Fanatics Fest. What's next for Bayley as her WWE contract winds down, and all the biggest news, rumors, and analysis from around the wrestling world. Whether you're following the road to SummerSlam or just want to stay caught up on everything happening in WWE, Pro Wrestling Focus has you covered. Search Pro Wrestling Focus wherever you get your podcasts or watch on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble, part of the Springer Podcast Network. All right, let's discuss outsourcing customer service. And this is going to be a prime example right here because I have Xfinity internet service. And I've been pretty satisfied with Xfinity. I've been a customer since 2023. And when I first got set up with the company, when we got the service, the representatives that I spoke to on the phone were based here in the United States. They were English speaking United States citizens. So the back and forth communication was pretty good, no issues. Now, recently, my wife and we have switched carriers. We were with Verizon, and now we're with Xfinity Mobile because they have that deal where you can get 2 lines and you get 1 line for free for an entire year, and then the second line you only pay $20 a month, and you get unlimited calling, texting, and data. Pretty good deal, right? But the person that I spoke to get this service set up was from another country. Now, from the sound of it, I think he sounded like he was from India or something like that. And I just want to make it clear, I don't have a problem with people that are overseas. I don't have an issue with them personally, but the frustration is when you have a hard time understanding the person that you're talking to because their English is not perfect. So you might have trouble understanding them. They might have trouble understanding you. And then it leads to frustration on both ends because they're trying to do their job and you're trying to get the best possible service that you can. Because my philosophy is if I'm doing business with an American company, I believe that customer service jobs should stay in America and they should not be outsourced overseas. Because that's the thing. And when you call the doctor's office to set up an appointment, you're speaking with an English sounding person. What are they eventually going to outsource those positions to foreigners as well? And then they have to communicate with the doctors to try to, coordinate which patients coming in for an appointment. I hope that it never comes to that. And I don't think it would ever come to that. But, we've started to see it with, internet and phone providers. We've seen it with, just regular customer service in general. Like if you bought a product from like Walmart or somewhere, you're more than likely going to speak to a foreigner, and Amazon, they're guilty of this as well. Companies outsource because it's cheaper. Customers end up frustrated because they can't understand the person on the other end, and employees overseas are simply doing their jobs that they're hired to do. So we can't really be pissed off at them. The decision comes from corporate leadership. They're the ones who are making these decisions. Like, oh well, we can make more money if we just get rid of our American call center employees, and then we're going to employ people from overseas because we can pay them shit and they'll love it. That's just the philosophy of how these companies are. They want cheaper employees so that way they can continue to profit. And it's wrong. It is wrong. Because how are you going to better assist your customers if you're not going to put forth the effort to assist them? I mean, we're still satisfied with our Xfinity internet. It's pretty fast, and I'm not going to discontinue the service just because they outsourced their customer service calls and everything like that. But at the same time, like I said, if I'm doing business with an American company, then I believe I should be talking to an American. And like I said, it's no offense to anybody overseas. It's just what I believe. But yeah, the bottom line is companies are outsourcing because they want to profit as much as they possibly can. All right, guys, let's take a quick time out here in the podcast because I've got something brand new to talk to you about that's coming to the Springer Podcast Network. And if you love psychological horror, disturbing stories, and the kind of fiction that sticks with you long after it's over, you're going to want to check this out. This Friday, the very first episode of Creepy AF finally drops. Every episode is an original horror story that's grounded in reality. No ghosts, no demons, no supernatural monsters. Just ordinary people in terrifying situations that feel like they could actually happen. If you ever wondered what true nightmare fuel sounds like, this is the podcast for you. So be sure to follow Creepy AF on your favorite podcast app so you're ready when episode 1 goes live this Friday. And you can also watch on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Creepy AF. Because the scariest monsters are the ones that could really exist. All right, I brought up AI earlier because, I think AI isn't going to be the answer to making customer service better, because, they're going to want to actually use AI to communicate with us as it pertains to customer service. Companies think AI is going to solve customer service, but I think it's just going to make people even more frustrated than they already are. Because they want to do the integration of AI phone trees, which is going to replace the standard touch tone menu options on your phone, and then AI voices. Like I said earlier, with the AI software that's going to give your voice a different accent, make you sound like you're Southern when you're really not, or make you sound like a New Yorker, or um, you know, uh or sound like you're from Jersey, or something like that. And then AI chatbots. So instead of actually talking to an actual person, you're talking to an AI chatbot. So yeah, the AI chatbot's going to ask you, how can we help you today? You tell the AI chatbot this is what you need help with, and then the chatbot's going to give you all these different options. And they already have incorporated that kind of stuff already. Like I said with Xfinity, if you go on the Xfinity app, I have a chat bot for that. I would say, a good 75-80% companies now have AI chat bots. And then you get transferred repeatedly from like department to department. This happened today, actually. I wasn't talking to AI, but I was talking to, or I was calling the dentist because I need to get my son into the dentist for to before school starts and everything, and I got transferred from one person to the next. So yeah, I mean that's the thing. You call somebody, you tell them what you want to do, and then they'll transfer you to somebody else. And then if they can't solve your problem, then they'll transfer you to someone completely different. So it's like, come on, can I talk to some fucking person? that is going to solve my issue. Ugh. Yeah. But yeah, AI isn't going to be the answer for the problems for customer service. Because at the end of the day, we just want to talk to an actual person that we can understand 110%. And we want that human being to be able to solve our problem, to solve the issue that we're having. And you can't please everybody. You can't. You cannot please everybody. That is the one thing about this world, is that you're not going to be able to please everybody. You're not going to be able to solve everyone's problem. And, some people you just can't help. It's as simple as that, because some people don't want to be helped, because they just want to bitch and complain about every little thing. But yeah, AI isn't going to help solve anything. It's just going to make things more complicated than they already are. All right, now before anyone thinks I'm just another customer complaining, I've worked in customer service before. If you remember last week's episode, I talked a little bit about how I was a manager at McDonald's, and that is a prime customer service job right there. Someone comes into McDonald's, they order food, and you ring them up, you take their order, you give them their food. That is customer service right there. And I would typically train my employees to be nice and polite to customers, and then do what they can to make the customer happy. If there's an issue and it's something that can quickly be fixed, go ahead and do it. Now, if it was something like a refund, or somebody wanted to speak to a manager directly, then I would deal with it. I would try to deal with the customers as much as I possibly could, so that way my employees didn't have to. Because some customers at McDonald's, especially the one I worked at in Van Wert, man, they were not so nice people at times. I'll tell you guys a story. I was working the afternoon shift. It was like because I would have to work some off shifts. I would close a lot, but I would also work some, day shift hours as well. So I worked like 8 to 4, or 9 to 5, or 10 to 6, something like that. So I would be there for the lunch rush, and then be there a little bit for the dinner rush. But I was in the office. I was doing something. I think I was doing some kind of paperwork, or I was switching out drawers for the registers. And then I come back up front after I was done with all that, and there was an old man in the drive-thru, and he proceeds to throw nugget sauce packets at me through the drive-thru window. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why are you throwing shit at me, dude? Like, he was all pissed off about something, and I think it was because he got the wrong sauce. Like, and he asked for honey mustard or something like that, and then he just got honey, or sweet and sour or something like that. So the dude is hurling sauce packets at me, and I wasn't even up front when this happened. So I got pissed off, and because here I am, I'm coming up front to see what's going on, getting an overview of where we're at and everything, drive through, front counter, everything like that. And then this old man out of nowhere is throwing nugget sauce packets at me. Yeah, dude was a total jackass, and he was definitely in the wrong. I know they say the customer's always right, but to me, that's bullshit, because I feel like even as a customer, you need to, well, what am I trying to say? You need to present yourself a certain way. And just going to outright throwing shit at somebody who wasn't even involved in whatever the issue was. Just because you got the wrong nugget sauce was definitely the wrong way to go about it. And I would even tell my employees this, let's try to keep the customers happy, but, I don't subscribe to the philosophy that the customer is always right. I don't. Now, my boss, she did, the general manager, she said the customer is always right. I'm like, really? Even when they're throwing shit at you? I don't think so. But yeah, man, I dealt with some pretty nasty people when I was a manager at McDonald's. I get yelled at, screamed at, I even got threatened at one point in time. So yeah, I had to deal with some stuff as a manager from shitty customers, it's just, awful people, who are clearly unhappy with their lives. And just because, their sandwich got messed up or, their fries were cold or supposedly cold, because I tried to make sure that everyone had hot, fresh fries. Um, yeah, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something really wrong with the people that I dealt with. They were just unhappy with their lives and they just wanted to be mean and nasty people for no reason. But yeah, man, I mean, customer service people take a lot of shit, a lot of abuse from people. They really do, you know, and it's unfair because, if somebody made a mistake and it's not your fault that this happened, and if you're the person that deals with said customer, you're going to get the brunt of the abuse pretty much. And it sucks. It really does. Because mistakes are going to happen in customer service work. It's going to happen. Because like I said, nobody's perfect. Somebody's going to make a mistake, and if it's something like McDonald's, the fries are going to be cold. Someone's sandwich didn't get made right. And, if they're a mean, nasty person, and if you're the one to deal with them, then they're going to take their fury and their anger out on you. Just how it goes. All right, let's talk about the customers themselves. Because customers have changed too. And nowadays, customers have short tempers, they're entitled, and if something gets completely out of hand, they're pulling out their phone and they're recording it for social media. You know, they're going to pull out their phone and they're going to start recording and they're going to put up on TikTok, Facebook, X, wherever they can post it at for attention because they're acting a damn fool. And, they want free stuff. And here's another thing too that, we dealt with at McDonald's as well. We would have people call in and say, "Oh, yeah, you guys messed up my sandwich. I asked for no onions, and I got onions put on my sandwich." Like, "Oh, sorry about that." And then we would write them down for a free sandwich. But people would start taking advantage of that, and it would just be a constant thing, where they wanted to basically get by without paying for stuff, and they would get like free sandwiches, free fries, free drinks, stuff like that. And they would just start abusing the system. So yeah, you got people who'll do shit like that. And then you got customers who take their frustrations out on hourly workers. They could have been having a bad day. Let's say, this guy, his girlfriend broke up with him. She had enough of his shit. She was done. She broke up with him. Now dude's pissed off. He's upset. So, he goes to Burger King and, he gets shitty with the front counter person. He's getting pissed off with her, all because his girlfriend broke up with him. Or, let's say someone had a bad day at work and then they come into, a restaurant like Taco Bell or Wendy's, and then they start getting shitty with the employees there. Because here's the thing, 9 times out of 10, the person that you're yelling at as a customer didn't create the problem. The problem is you. Yeah, the problem is you. 100%. Now, there are times where the employees, management's in the wrong, but, now that I've, noticed it from both sides of the equation, 9 times out of 10, yeah, you're the problem and not the employees or management. It all starts with you. Over the last couple years, I've noticed something, and this is just my observation. Not everyone will agree with this, but Mondays just feel different when it comes to businesses, customer service. Mondays just seem slower. Employees appear to be less engaged. Companies feel less responsive. And I've noticed it with customer service and doctors' offices. It's just like they come back from the weekend and everything, and they're just like, ugh, we got to do this shit today. I was drunk all weekend long. I was at a party. I got hammered. I was drinking way too much. I had a hell of a hangover on Sunday. Slept all day Sunday. And now I got to come back in on Monday and go to work. I'm not saying that's everybody, but listen, maybe it's just me, but have you guys noticed that too? Like people just like Mondays, they just want it to be like a reset day. They just want it to be a reset day. Like they're at their job, but they don't want to actually do the job. And then Tuesday through Friday, they're like normal. Like, okay, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. Okay, what's your order? Go ahead and give me your order. Oh, you want to schedule an appointment for Friday morning? Cool. We got it. Got you down. Like they're just, on point Tuesday through Friday, but Mondays is just like, uh, why are we here? Why do I have to do this? And then some businesses are closed on Mondays now. Like that is the wildest thing, and I think it's been ever since COVID is when that started. Is when businesses started being open only on certain days. Like okay, we're only going to be open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we're going to be closed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Like I don't understand that. It's like why even be in business then if you're not going to be in business every day? I mean, like, but then again, I sat back and I thought about it, and I think the reason why they're not open every day is because they can't afford to be open every day, and they can only be in business on these certain amount of days because that's what they have to do in order to stay afloat, and that's why and that's what's it's going to take for them to stay in business. So yeah, I mean it's crazy, but ever since COVID, things have definitely changed for sure. Businesses don't stay open every single day. They close on certain days. Like, I go to a grocery store here in Bern called Troyer's. Now if you live in Adams County, then you know what Troyer's is. And even some people in Ohio know what Troyer's is. Some people come from Ohio to Troyer's and everything. And I usually only get meat from there. But it's a full blown grocery store. And they're closed on Sundays and Tuesdays. Now, Sundays, I understand, a lot of people go to church on Sundays. But Tuesday is a really weird day of the week to be closed. So they're only open on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And Saturday, they're not even open a full day. They're only open for a couple hours and then they're done. They're closing up shop for the day. So yeah, so basically you gotta get there Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Basically, is when you have until 6 o'clock to get there and get your stuff because they close at 6. So yeah, it's just wonky hours. But that's the world that we live in today. But Mondays for sure definitely feel different. All right, let's tie everything together. I talked about corporate cost cutting, the corporate businesses replacing American employees with foreigners, the call centers being all foreigners, and then there's the understaffing. There's not enough employees to help uh, people, the customers, and the understaffing can lead to burnout. Some people get burnt out because there's way too much on their plate. They're working 6 to 7 days a week, and it's just tiring. It wears on a person. And then there's the outsourcing, like I said before. These people from other countries, and like I said before, I'm not against them or have anything against them, but that's just what's happening. American workers are getting replaced by foreign workers for these customer service jobs. And then there's AI, that will ultimately try to replace people, but I don't think it's going to work out as well as they think it's going to. And then customers becoming more impatient as well. So it's just a lot of issues that is causing basically the death of customer service as we know it. And when you understaff a business, replace people with machines, and expect fewer employees to handle more work, customer service isn't just going to decline. It's almost guaranteed to decline. So here's some final thoughts. Customer service isn't dying because every employee is lazy. It isn't dying because every customer is entitled. It's dying because companies are asking people to do more with less while replacing human interaction with automation. The employees on the front lines are burned out. Customers are frustrated. And somewhere in the middle, respect has disappeared. But what do you guys think? Am I completely off base, or have you noticed that customer service is getting worse as well? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you've enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to follow the Springer Podcast Network for more of the Cody Springer Show and any and all content on the network. Take care, and I will talk to you all very soon.